course, a Golden Globe, SAG Award, Critics' Choice, and now Academy Award nominee for his work in this film. Congratulations. But what we really need to talk about is Barbara Streisand. She tweeted at you. Barbara Streisand tweeted at you.
She did. It has nothing to do with this movie at all. No, it's been I saw the movie when I was 12 years old, and my parents had all my records, and I then wrote her a letter when I was 14. But I then I had a day off 2 days ago and went to Malibu, as you do if you're a fan, and my wife was very accommodating of this and parked outside her gates, and I took a selfie and I asked the security if that was allowed, and they said yes, it's a public space, they have no jurisdiction. So I said, well, just like your permission. He said, well, thanks for asking, but you don't need it. And I posted this, and it sort of went viral because the lady herself tweeted back the next day and said, I also posted this letter that I had written when I was 14 saying, please come to Swaziland. Apparently your relationship with Ryan O'Neill has collapsed or something, and come stay in our house, we have a nice view and a pool, and nobody will know who you are here, and just all that guff that you wrote when you're 14. So I didn't really realise that 47 years later I would get a response from her.
Wow. Wow. And she went out of her way to praise the movie too.
She did.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue to come back.
Yes, it does. Yes. It always has something to do with the movie.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, well, that might be my favorite film of this year, seeing the footage of you on the phone, hearing what Barbara had said. Were you I know you said you were crinkly faced, but I didn't know if you were actually crying.
I was a 62-year-old man, fully grown, crying. It's just that approbation. It's the journey from there to being here is so unlikely and just extraordinary for me.
That's amazing. So. And she has great taste because this is an amazing movie. And I'm embarrassed to admit I did not know Lee Israel's story at all before this movie. I don't know if you were at all familiar with it or how it came to you. No. Did you think it was a fictional story when you first read it?
No, because I recognised the Lee Israel because I had her biography of Tululu Bankhead on my shelf. So, but because she was such a good writer, that was the way that the pre-celebrity writers. Writing about other celebrities, she was self-effacing, and that she wrote about, her subject was the star of the thing. So I recognised the writers, obviously Nicole Holsteller and Jeff Whitty, immediately from the work that I knew from them, and Diary of a Teenage Girl, but Marielle Heller's first film, of course Melissa McCarthy. So I suppose my first, not worry, but I wondered whether it would be a vehicle for the Melissa McCarthy comedy brand that we've come to know, for want of a better way of putting it. And so I wasn't sure whether it was just going to be Melissa McCarthy as Lee Israel.
Yeah.
But, when I finally met her for a couple of hours on a Friday, exactly a year ago before we started shooting in Manhattan on a Monday, it was clear that she was 5,000% committed to embodying every bit of this very, very challenging woman's porcupine-like personality.
So you had never met Melissa before?
No.
I was kind of curious if you had, this may sound silly, but like a chemistry read, because so much of the movie hinges on your chemistry.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's just a fortunate thing that when you meet somebody, that you hope that you're going to have some connection with them, and it was instantaneous. So I thought, well, if nothing else, at least we will have a good time making it, because we were on the same page, as it were, of how we saw the characters in the movie. And so the feeling of that we were this tiny group of people in Manhattan, in the actual bookshops and bars where they operated in the early 90s, was, that felt like a real gift in itself.
I was trying to think, I don't know if you've actually played a real person before. I think you have.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, you must have, right?
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Well, I also choose to believe many of your characters are real. Like the guy in The Player. I know that person.
Oh, okay. No, I played a guy called Henry Guila, who was
Of course.
the husband of Anais Nin,
Yes.
who, despite apparently having a 14-inch penis, she went off with Henry Miller instead. How can I segue round into this, where the only lines improvised in this whole, 2 words improvised, were when I arrive in the Julius Bar in the first scene that my character appears in the film, and I say "Jack Cock, Big Cock," which just came out of my mouth. And when I did the second take, Marielle Heller said, "Why didn't you say that again?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "Well, we're putting it in the movie, so you have to do it again." And it survived.
And I know not much was known about Jack, that they haven't, really been able to. You weren't able to really talk to people who knew him. He kind of, I don't want to say disappeared. That's not the right word, but there weren't.
Well, he was a victim of the AIDS
Yeah.
plague, and there are no photographs of him, and we couldn't find any people that knew him who were still alive. So there was, and Lee Israel was very parsimonious in how little information she gave in her memoir, which
Really?
I thought that would be a sort of Wikipedia font of information, so the YouTube in print of everything that I could find out about him. But apart from a little cigarette holder that he used, which I asked if I could have that in film, and that he'd been in jail for 2 years for holding up a cab driver for refusing to pay the bill, the cab fare. So he held him up at knife point and then got slung in jail for 2 years. So, and she also conceded that once she had been rumbled by the FBI that where she thought that he would get $300, $400, $500 for a forged letter, he'd come back with $2,000, even if he'd skimmed off the top.
Really?
And so I thought, well, he obviously had the street smarts and chutzpah to go out there and just schmooze people out of their money.
Yeah, and charm, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the one person that Lee seemed to take to.
Yeah, and I think his act of friendship was really cleaning up that cat shite.
Yeah. I mean, that's love right there. You see it.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So where did you even start if the book didn't necessarily provide you with answers? Did you just create a character from scratch?
But the script, as any actor here will know, the script gives that to you. If Melissa McCarthy is the person acting opposite, she was so inhabited the part of Lee Israel so completely without any scintilla of sympathy, sentimentality whatsoever. And her centre of gravity seemed to have shifted, and her voice was lower, and she was insistent that her wig had grey roots showing at all times. So, and I think there are 3 photographs of Lee Israel. She was more in the photographs, and she actually wore lipstick and had like a fancy blouse or whatever you call a top shirt. But Melissa chose to, and with Arjun, the costume designer, to go for a complete the grump look.
Yeah.
So I think it was a smart thing to do.
Oh yeah, she's amazing. And something that I love she does, a lot of comedians think they have to tamp down their charisma or their comedic abilities to play a serious part, and you still see all that. She's just, she's just giving this amazing, she's just disappeared into the skin of this woman. It's amazing.
Agreed.
Yeah. And she's not here, I'm just praising her.
She's in one of her 9 houses.
Are you serious?
What I feel so strongly about the Me Too movement is I would love to earn the same amount of money as Melissa McCarthy.
She's done a lot of movies every year.
She does.
Yeah. This may sound like a silly question because you have worked with so many amazing filmmakers and actors, but do you ever have that moment when you're supposed to be a professional and you kind of go, oh my God, I'm sharing a scene with Melissa McCarthy?
Every time, even sitting here in the ArcLight cinema in Hollywood Boulevard. Oh, no, we're not on Hollywood Boulevard. What boulevard are we on? Sunset Boulevard. Thank you. Even more iconic name. It's completely surreal because I grew up literally in the middle of nowhere in the smallest country in the Southern Hemisphere in Africa. So it is the journey that I've gone on is beyond anything that I could have imagined.
I think also one of the reasons I've noticed artists respond to this movie so much is there is a theme about not compromising for your art and also not being appreciated for it. Did you guys have discussions about that? Could you relate to that to some degree?
I think more than anything, not being seen or recognized either for your work or just as a human being so that in Lee's case, she invested all her love in her amazing record collection, which is on the soundtrack, and also her love of felines. So that was that she had more response from that and success than she had with human beings. And I think that just the nature of friendship that it deals with, that you go through this sort of A to Z vicissitudes of it, whereby you see the falling in love at the beginning of the bar, as it were, albeit platonic, then the loyalty that follows, and the good times that they have, and then the inevitable betrayal and the poignancy of the reconciliation, which is, of course, underwritten by the fact that he knows and she knows that this is the last time they'll ever see each other because he's dying of AIDS. And the line that she had, which is taken verbatim from her memoir, that she says when Jack comes into the bar and sees him on a stick, says, "I had an overwhelming desire to trip you up," which I think is just symptomatic of the kind of friendship that you can only really insult people that you are really good friends with, where somebody punched you out.
And you really shot in the real bar.
Yeah, the Julius Bar were very generous. I think it's the oldest gay bar in Manhattan, and is apparently completely unchanged from how it was then. And we sat in the places, in the exact same seats where these two characters regularly bar-fly themselves. Wow. So that was a feeling of, it's an odd thing if you're playing people, especially in Lee Israel's case, who was semi-famous, that you are honouring the real people by trying to be as authentic to them as you possibly can be. So the fact that it wasn't shot in a studio and the actual bookshops smelt and had all the texture of being the real thing, I think that had an impact on us as well.
Do you think Lee and Jack would like this movie? I know it's been said that Lee didn't, liking things is not her thing. But I think, aside from the fact that you're not 29 in the movie,
Sorry.
I think he'd be very pleased with his portrayal.
I hope so. You hope so. I have no idea. I don't know.
What was the most challenging part of making the film? A particular scene, or just something about the character?
Well, because it was such an intensely short shoot over 26 days. There is this. The final scene that my character had with Lee in the Julius Bar, when I know I'm dying, she knows I'm dying, and she has to perform this reconciliation in order she can write the memoir. Because it was the penultimate scene that we shot, and I knew that the movie was coming to an end, and it is that thing that when you're on a movie that you absolutely love doing genuinely, as opposed to the PR version where you go, "Oh no, we were great. We were all a great happy family, and everybody's can't wait never to see each other again." This was the reverse of that. So saying goodbye to each other in the story and knowing that within a day it would come to an end and have to say goodbye as well. That was the hardest thing to do. So it was a bit like all those endings that E.T. has and Out of Africa, where they say goodbye 5 times, and by the end you're just absolutely wrenched out. So,
26 Days is amazing because it's also it's a period piece. Mm-hmm. You guys are in pretty much every scene together. That actually baffles me. Do you sort of enjoy that pace, or is it exhausting?
We've shot 5-day weeks, and I think what made it, I just come off doing Logan, which was 300 guys in the southern states who were hugely testosterized and stuntmen and trucks and guns and all this stuff going on. All their arms were bigger than my thighs put together. So being on this movie where essentially all the scenes are two-handers. Mm-hmm. There's never more than 2 or 3 people in a scene. That makes the whole nature of it very intimate. And I think the fact that it was co-written by, directed, starring, produced, crewed predominantly by women, the feeling of being nurtured and the focus on the emotional content of everything gave it a whole different kind of atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So, which was hugely enjoyed.
And then did you go right from this to the new Star Wars movie? Or are you allowed to say? Maybe you're not allowed to tell if you're even in that movie.
I am in that movie.
Okay.
And I can tell you it comes out on the 19th of December. Whether I'm still in it, I don't know. You never know.
Well, tell us everything that happens in your scenes.
Okay. No, I went from this to do My Fair Lady in a 4,000-seater opera house in Chicago.
That's amazing. Yeah. Oh my gosh, what, will you take that to Broadway?
No, they're doing it on Broadway, not with me. They're doing it with a man half my age.
Oh, ouch!
Who's in Downton Abbey, who's a very, very nice man.
Was that your choice, or?
My choice?
Yeah, would you have done it?
Oh, in a heartbeat, yeah.
Oh. I would love to see that. Well, you could do it here. LA has a theater scene, believe it or not.
Does it?
By the way, something I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I just think it's interesting since you're playing this character. You can't drink?
No, I'm allergic to alcohol.
Wow.
Well, you know, it's ironic because my father was an alcoholic, and I thought that it was psychosomatic, but when I was 17 years old, I went to a doctor because I couldn't keep alcohol down for more than 9 minutes, and he did a blood test and said, you have no enzyme to process alcohol, it's completely toxic, you can never ever drink. So it's some irony that the first film that I ever did 33 years ago, Whitney and I played an alcoholic, and now, you know, 3 decades later, I'm returning to alcoholic territory.
So you're not method on that. You didn't get drunk.
No.
No.
I don't have 3 Oscars for method acting.
Yet. I do want to take some questions from the audience if you have one. Sorry, there's a bright light in my eyes, but just raise your hand, and we'll try to get through a couple. If no, oh sure, we'll start right down here.
How much of Withnail is in your character?
In this character?
Yeah.
How much of Withnail is in this character?
I have no idea. Same actor, long coats, period movie. I don't know. In my head, Withnail is so entitled, arrogant, selfish, and he would never clean anybody's cat shit up. But you know, obviously it's the same actor, and I don't have the skills to play drunk in a way that is completely different from how I did it before. So I think you will know the answer better than I will.
I'm curious, actually, what do people recognize you most for when they want to stop and talk to you? I imagine if it's Logan, they turn the other way. But, like, you know, is it the player or Gosford Park or?
Sometimes Game of Thrones, as I was in that for a couple of episodes. It's weird. I mean, Spice World.
Oh, nice, of course.
I'm all Hudson Hawk. It's never predictable.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I'm not. You know, in England, I am, because the Withnail has a kind of rites of passage, generational ongoing thing, where it's at colleges and schools, and people seem to play the drinking game, following drink for drink what these characters do. But outside of England, no, not.
You know, Spice Girls are reuniting and going on.
Yes, I'm Posh Spice is not doing it, so I'm standing in for her. Old Posh.
I can't tell if you're kidding or not.
I've shown
I
girl legs.
assume you're kidding. But you're a good actor, so you might be kidding me. Oh, sure, there's one right in the middle there.
Hi, what was your favorite day of shooting and why?
Favorite day of shooting?
Favorite day of shooting? There was more than one. In any scene that we had to do eating, because I'm a complete glutton, so where we had drumsticks and eating noodles and stuff, I loved that. And eating that bread from Zabar's, I think I went through 3 of those like that. And Melissa said, "Where does it go?" She said, "Where does it go?" And I have no idea where it goes. But so eating and talking is fantastic, because you're an actor, right? Okay, you just know that there's. I know that Brad Pitt has this habit now, in any movie that I've seen him in, he eats all the time. Yeah, I don't know whether that's to do, my daughter thinks that it's to do with, because he's so handsome, he must think that it de-handsomizes himself in some way. Well, I don't know, it drives me nuts, but there is something about, it's like food on location, or, you know, like bunking off school. Being paid to eat a huge amount on screen. And can you do another take? Yes, I'd love to do that. It's just a huge pleasure. Sadly, it wasn't lobsters, but, you know, but that cat was amazing, because it was a real, talk about method. It was the Marlon Brando of cats, because even when I was offered that shrimp, and I know cats are trained in this, but I've not come across in other cat movies that I've been involved in where cats will refuse shrimp like this cat did, but it did. And in the veterinary scene, it sneezed, just of its own volition, and didn't sneeze any other time. This was like, what the fuck, I'm being upstaged by a sneezing cat.
Have you done many cat movies?
I've been in movies that have had cats in them, yeah.
But none quite like this.
Oh, no, this is the Stanislavski of cats.
I think we have time for one more right down there.
Hi, just a funny question. During the scene where we saw you behind, was that your
Was that your behind? Or you're a stunt double?
Thank you for bringing that up. I have a caveat. I have a pet peeve, because I never understand it when people have had sex in a movie or on TV, and then they get up the next morning to go and do whatever, and they're fully clothed or pajamaed up, or made up. That's the other thing. So I said, well, these two guys have just, shtupped. Then I have to, if I'm going to feed the cat, I've got to get out of the bed, not wearing a pair of anything. So I spoke to Brandon, the DOP, and I said, can I do this? And the producers were very taken aback, because they said, people are usually trying not to be seen. I said, well, look, at that point I was 60 years old. I said, I'm going to get out of this bed, move quite fast, but be kind and light my right butt cheek. Because in the day of, in the age of freeze frame, I do not want somebody somewhere to be tweeting me a picture of my backside and going, it looks like old porridge or something like that. So, but what was hilarious to me is that the producer said, oh no, we have to call your agent. I said, well, it's a 5-hour time difference to England. They said, no, you've got to sign a nudity contract of consent. I said, you are kidding me, right? They said, no. So then we scrabbled up this thing together, and I duly signed it, and my butt's in the movie. On that note, thank you very, very much.
Well, again, I want to congratulate you on such a beautiful movie and the Oscar nomination. I'm so happy for you. So you guys